Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the June 15th meeting of the City Council Finance Committee. Madam Clerk, if you would please begin by calling the roll.
Councilor King, Councilor Cohen.
Present.
Councilor Finch.
Present.
Councilor Harris.
Present.
Councilor Hughes. Councilor LaFarge. Councilor Leeang. Councilor Calucci.
Yep.
Chairman Cohen.
Present.
Five.
All right, we indeed have a quorum. Before we begin, I'd just like to read into the record the open meeting law, which is as follows. Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived by those present, and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. So before us here this evening is Council Order 2017-073, which is an appropriation and property acquisition of $80 million for Quincy Center's downtown improvement program. The council was given a presentation at our last hearing. It was televised on Quincy Access TV. So sort of tradition, if you will, of this committee has been to afford the public an opportunity to weigh in on what is before us this evening in the form of an appropriation. Just in terms of rules of engagement, and I do appreciate everyone just kind of hanging in there and waiting for us to get going. But if you could, please approach the microphone for the record, state your name and address, and we'll allow 35 minutes for a commentary. And with that, first person up, please.
Hi, good evening. John Keys, 100 Cove Way, Quincy, Mass. Lifelong Quincy resident, union iron worker for over 20 years. Very much in favor of this project with the union ties and whatnot. Also, I believe that this helps to squelch the underground economy, which we were here having a meeting about not too long ago. I think that's one of the big ways to build the underground economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
My name is Richard Tobin. I live at 50 Bayview, Quincy, Mass. I've been here for 7 years, resident. I've worked at the Good Health food store down in Quincy before this. The parking's horrendous. I'm all for the parking. I'm also a local 7 iron worker, and I would love to see some improvements here for parking.
Thank you, Richard.
Robert Hall, 34 Residential Drive, Quincy. I'm also a local 7 iron worker, and I am all for this project. I think we do the best work around, and my son's going to be growing up around here, so I'd like to see all these projects that are getting put up last a long time. And I know we do the best work, so thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
I'm Tim Cahill, 51 Glenwall Road. I'm here representing the Quincy Chamber of Commerce. My new position, we're very much in favor of this project. We think it is a wise financial move by the council, not only to engage in this prior to some of the buildings going out to try to alleviate parking problems before these buildings come on, but I think it's a great idea that we're using a private builder. Nothing against public projects, but we've had some bad luck in the city with parking garages, the MBTA over there that's been empty, I think, for a decade, and we had the Ross parking garage. So I was attending the meeting last night, saw the presentation, and as a resident of Quincy and as a representative of the business community, I think this is in the right direction. I think it's going to protect the residents, at least from an aesthetic point of view, those on Revere Road, and it will obviously be great for the downtown. Most communities put the parking in after the buildings are done, in Cambridge, in Somerville, even in Boston. So I think it's wise that the council act on this and to get this parking garage ready before many of these buildings go up. So I respectfully speak in favor of this council acting on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Good evening. My name is Craig McDonald. I live at 22 Putnam Street here in Quincy, and I'm a carpenter in the carpentry, and I'm very supportive of this project. And basically, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig.
38 One Street, North Quincy, a 40-year resident of the city. I'm glad to see the direction that the city is currently going in. I think it's imperative to have parking for the further growth and development of the downtown, and I'm extremely in favor of going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
How you doing? John Raphael, 62 Grandwall Road. I was at the meeting last night, and one of the issues I have is that they're doing a lot of things that cost extra money to build this garage. One of the things is, why is it not a cast-in-place, post-tension, concrete superstructure with lower maintenance? Basically, it's a higher quality garage. We're paying a lot of money for this garage. There's extra money that has to be spent for ventilation. They're doing extra money to build underground, extra money because there needs to be a drainage system in there, extra money to make it look pretty. Why not spend extra money to build a structure that will really last? The $80 million bond issue that we have doesn't really say what the taxpayers are going to get for $80 million. I would like to see a breakdown list. We're going to get a parking garage. I'm not sure how much the parking garage cost. It was actually, Mr. Potter from the Ledger said it was $46.6 million in the paper. At the meeting last night I asked, I believe they said it was $31 million. The bottom line is for $80 million, it'd be nice to provide a list to the taxpayers. What are the taxpayers going to get for $80 million? I know we're getting a garage, but what else are we going to get? I would like a better garage. I would like a lot more for the taxpayers. And, you know, I would like to also see the developers contribute more to the project, because right now we're seeing, I heard maybe 50 spaces is going to LBC, where that number is obviously going to be more than 50 spaces. And who says that we're not going to give some places to some of the restaurants once they're in and dedicate other spaces to other businesses that come in who are tenants to these the businesses that are in there. So we're also going to be building another parking garage in the future on top of this one. So we only have a 5% debt limit, and we're approaching that quickly. And once our credit is shut off because we've reached the debt limit, you can't spend money on anything you want, and you're really going to have to start looking at costs a lot more than we're looking at them right now. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Joshua Cook. I live at 82 Blue. Number 424, Carpenter's Gate, and very much interested in getting more parking downtown. It's kind of parking here. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Josh.
David goes here, so I'll take that for Quincy. I'm trying to be as quick and as fast as I can. Again, please accept the fact that I truly wish to see a new environment at Quincy Center. Unfortunately, what is before you is neither a good plan nor is it financially responsible. For good starters, best practices call for small garages, much smaller than what's proposed. Reasons include the people don't care for large garages for reasons of safety, as well as for convenient parking as close as possible wherever they're headed. To this end, some of you may recall that Streetworks planned to build as many as 8 small garages well dispersed around Quincy Center, and which were slated to average around half the size of what's proposed at the Hancock lot. Similarly, a solid case can be made that building the now demolished Ross Garage, a large garage also, only hastened the decline of Quincy Center, and yet the administration seeks to repeat the same mistake by building another outsized garage. Further troubling is how the administration is looking to go with precast construction so as to contain what have been apparently exploding cost expectations. For those of you unfamiliar with precast construction, it is essentially prefabricated concrete Lego. This one's plain and not ugly. You can dress it up, but it's still ugly. For a local example, just look at the main parking lot for the High Point residential complex up on Quarry Street. More troubling, however, the cost and the financing of the same. For starters, in less than 2 months, the projected cost of the proposed garage appears to have risen by roughly 15%, even after opting to go with cheaper precast construction. Further, given numerous as well as considerable cost overruns on projects promised by the administration to run no more than said to be maximum prices, one can only reasonably expect the final number will be even higher. But one example from among many projects running over, renovating this building ran almost twice what was promised. And this is before consideration of the insurance proceeds spent to undo the fire damage. As for the proposed garage, the current parking space cost is roughly $47,000 by the data I have. Standard cost metrics, however, would suggest $30,000 per space is more than sufficient given non-union labor and no more than $40,000 per space given prevailing wage construction costs. So far, however, the administration has failed to provide you with a reasonable rationale for roughly 50% cost premium. And then there is the inherent appearance of conflict of interest that a prospective tenant of the garage is slated to be building it, while at the same time the cost of it is skyrocketing. And speaking of parking tenants, the lease deals for part of the garage capacity are called giveaways. While the mayor waived affordable housing obligations from Weston Chestnut to Cliveden in ways arguably improper, at least those projects have built their own parking capacity on their own dime. Now, however, the mayor has proposed to not only waive affordable housing obligation for the pending LPC and O'Connell projects, the municipal parking garage lease deals to those developments will provide at least $2.5 million in net present value each of the developers in the first 8 years of the lease via a cut rate lease that will save them the cost of building their own space and probably twice as much more in incentives on a net present value basis over the next 30 years of the lease agreement. Please be sure to also note that the lease rates are so low that they don't include charges for the city's operating and maintenance expenses for the garage. Each lease also has its own unique extra giveaway. The O'Connell project will apparently enjoy the exclusive use of a likely private entranceway to the only underground level of far more expensive to build parking, but its lease price is based on the average cost per space for the entire building. Figure this is around 33% discount. And LBC's unique lease term is that its lease payment in years 9 through 38 after interest-only bond debt, and it has to flip over to principal and interest debt on debt, is limited to the lesser of the debt service per parking space lease, or $150 a month. At an average currently projected construction cost of $47,000 a space, $150 monthly rental payment will barely cover the principal payment, much less provide much towards the monthly debt interest service expense on the municipal bond debt on the garage. This is financial madness, in which at the end of the day, taxpayers will have to subsidize one way or another, no matter how the administration cares to couch things via what proper analysis would view is at least bordering on electrodomain, if not QuickBooks. As Milton Friedman famously said, there's no such thing as a free lunch. However, apparently he was never part of a real estate development team that did anything with Quincy Center. Next, the collateral land taking costs. The administration has presented its position that a fair portion of the takings are needed to provide public park space. The reality, however, is that these purchases and then reuse of this property, city property, will primarily enhance the green space around the O'Connell project and somewhat so for the LBC project, while at the same time creating a little more than landscape open space leading up to the proposed garage. Where are any significant public amenities proposed within and around the current parking lot? At best, it appears that only one costly one of physical significance is the proposed atrium. So what if at the end of the day, the much valued atrium is ultimately little more than an expensive and the partial covered access way to the proposed parking garage, which will at best only provide additional benefit to abutting commercial tenants in LBC's building. Further from west of Chestnut, inclined to give less than $2 million in incentives by exempting them from the local affordable housing ordinance per rationale that developed in Quincy Center needed a jump start. Now, however, solid cases we made that upwards of 10 times as much in net present value incentives are pending for LBC, the LBC and O'Connell projects, and which in total are not all that much greater than private investment costs or outlay than what has been done by Weston Chestnut and the Galvin project. In short, incentives are going up exponentially at a point one would think that they should be at least steady, if not diminishing. As such, what is Foxrock going to expect if and when it might have a proposal for development of former Ross Garage footprint? Similarly, the administration is seeking to issue $80 million of debt in support of roughly a similar amount of new development. FYI, 2-to-1 ratio of new private development outlays to public debt infrastructure spending is considered as the breaking point, the mere breaking point, to cover both municipal debt service and increased costs providing local services to the new private development. As such, now, what the administration's different consultant could say, his worst-case scenario does not take in what local taxpayers will likely be stuck covering when things don't work out as promised. And finally, it must be noted that none of these proposals were put out to bid, even though all have at least aspects where seeking bids was both entirely possible as well as proper. Rather, deals were cut with all the aforementioned developers by the administration behind closed doors. That, and one developer's been hit with a $10,000 fine for making illegal campaign contributions to Maricopa, as well as the parties tied to this development group have provided over $50,000 so far unsanctioned contributions to the mayor, as well as $15,000 more spread among some of you. While the administration has long said that everything is kosher, the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, the whole thing not only fails to pass the sniff test, it also puts taxpayers on the risk that things don't work out as planned. At the same time, I must only properly concede that just maybe things will work out reasonably well in the end. If not, however, don't any of you dare try to deny that you weren't given ample as well as fair warnings. As such, I would like to hope that you all will give this proposal the careful and extended consideration it deserves. For example, over the whole of your summer recess, as opposed to agreeing to a quick approval on what is clearly still a cocktail napkin plan presented by the administration. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Ms. Bill, anyone else wishing to speak in favor or opposition during this meeting? Anyone else wishing to speak?
Rob Lockhouse, 16 U Street. I think this project was going to provide a lot of good paying jobs for local residents.
Scott?
Eric Goodrich, 109 Grove Street. I'm in favor for the project. I think it's a good project. Fourth generation with the guy in the city. My family came here as shippers and lots of shipyards out here. We don't have it. So I believe it's a real wage job for this. It would help us all stay.
Sorry.
Greg Quinn, 15 Mile Road, Quincy. I'm in favor of this project, mostly because before we got on Union, I went to Quincy Cove, and parking was bad then, and you get jammed up in the garage over there. I don't know how many people are in Quincy College now, but you got new residents here. You're gonna need a lot of some sort, because you just knocked another one down. Yeah, so that's what it is. Thanks.
Thanks, Greg. perfectly fine. The sheets where you can sign either in favor or opposition located at the back. So at this point, we're going to transition from the public comment period into the regularly scheduled, or continuation to the regularly scheduled Finance Committee. Mr. Geary, I'm going to invite you to the podium. Councilors, as you know, last time we deliberated this matter, we had about 5 or 6 takeaways, which I worked with Jen Manning. Jen, thank you for your help on that. To compile your questions and work with the administration, some of the subject matter experts who are here with us this evening to get you timely answers. I believe you had well over a week to read, digest, comprehend, hopefully formulate some questions and or interact with Mr. Geary and his team. I'm going to be a good chairman, stop talking, and allow Mr. Geary to sort of give us a brief summary of where we were, where we are now, and then we'll go into deliberation. So the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good evening to the other honorable members of the council. Thank you for this further opportunity to explain the elements of the ongoing downtown redevelopment process, focusing now on the initial public improvements that are embodied in the request before you, before the council, for a further diff appropriation. You were previously furnished back on May 15th a enumeration of each of the elements of the constitute in total an $80 million request that breaks out the various components.
Bill, excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt, just because it was brought up in the public comment period. Is that document accessible to the public?
Yes,
I'm assuming that it is. So
it is absolutely accessible.
Point of order, particularly again in terms of some of this. If you remember at the last meeting, I just want to be very clear. We're being asked in this committee this evening is to pass a bond authorization, correct?
I believe
That is, again, based, that's, excuse me, in terms of the Quincy Center Development District, that engages also, we're talking about some of the acquisition that's involved. It's part of that.
That is correct.
So I want to be very clear, again, and I understand the nature of the construction and that you've begun to reveal to the public the nature of this particular garage, but that particular plan has not come before this council today at this point.
That is correct.
Great. Got it. So we're not voting tonight about the garage. We're voting about a bond authorization that begins the steps towards moving in that direction.
Well, the bond is intended to finance.
I understand that completely, but based on the land disposition agreement, part of the elements that come in are actually that the plans themselves need to come back before this body.
That is correct.
Right.
The appropriation we're seeking would fund the ultimate design of the garage.
Correct, exactly, I got it. I just want to make that clear because there was some confusion, and again, I generally support whatever, in terms of everybody coming up and saying they support the project. I do as well. I just don't want there to be any confusion about what we're doing here tonight.
Correct.
Thank you.
And I know at our last meeting, and among the queries that the chairman conveyed to the administration for clarification response was the cost, the projected cost of the garage. This body, a year ago at this time, had appropriated a sum sufficient for us to begin the preliminary design of that garage. And so we have provided the council with some additional data related to the garage that were in the packets this evening. And there'll be even more. And we have focused in on what the parameters of the garage should be by way of its size, its footprint, its height, as well as some of the aesthetics, including a new public space, which we've spoken about before here at the council, so that the council can have a better idea as to response to the questions that were raised about the prospective estimated cost of the garage that's contained in the $8 million request. I know that there have been questions about the diff. I know the chairman of the committee has spoken directly with Mr. Seymour to pose a number of questions. We provided in our response additional charts and tables to demonstrate the capacity of the diff to pay for this project or to be sufficient in the future to pay for the entire $80 million appropriation, as well as valuation increases in the area. So the council has heard from Mr. Seymour. He's here available to respond to additional questions that you may have with respect to the diff. We also have available, because you are correct, that there hasn't been a specific presentation on the garage. We do, however, as part of the process that we've been engaged in to put together the estimated cost of that garage and its various components. We do have a representative of the Desmond Company, which is a well-known, highly regarded designer of garages throughout the United States. And he is prepared to augment the material that's been provided to you from the public presentation we made this evening here at City Hall, as well as another outreach meeting we had with merchants surrounding the Hancock lot a week or so ago. And he can address any questions there are with respect to the cost factors. In addition to Mr. Wilson of Desmond Associates, we have Tom McClurk from Kennedy Contractors. Kennedy Contractors is the designated construction firm for this project and its associated public components. And in developing these cost estimates, we had both of those organizations working separately, each with their own cost estimators. Kennedy's has their cost estimators. Desmond actually uses an outside firm. And once we agreed upon these parameters as to what its capacity would be and other elements related to its development, we brought them together to compare those estimations. And so Mr. McClurk of Kennedy could actually tell you some of the steps they took to secure real-time cost estimates that aren't projections or speculative, but are reflective of the marketplace that they work in today. Both Kennedy as a contractor building garages, building numerous garages throughout the Boston area, as well as Desmond has designed numerous garages. Also, we did, as promised, include some architectural renderings. All of us, through our discussions here over the course of the last year, in talking about a garage and in talking about the civic space that we are looking forward to providing as part of that project, agreed that the one thing we, in our capacities, wanted to avoid was a repeat of some of the sad stories of municipal garages, including our own Ross garage, which we finally demolished a year ago this month. That what we didn't want to provide to the citizens of Quincy was this era's version of the Ross garage. We wanted to provide something that was going to enhance this historic city, be something we can all be proud of, and be something that was and is and will last, both in terms of being well operated and well maintained, but initially being well built and constructed and designed so that it will avoid the problems that have beset other municipal garages in the past. So that's where we are on garage as a project. It's not the last time you're going to see this, but we need the appropriation for us to proceed with the design, final design of the garage, as well as the associated infrastructure work that goes along with it, and the takings, which are the necessary precursor for us to begin some of the infrastructure work. Is also to be funded by this requested appropriation. So that's my introductory commentary. Open to questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gary. Just to kind of level set with the council, obviously this is a very lengthy deliberation. Some of us have spoken prior to the meeting, some of us haven't. The sequencing of this is we'll have an opportunity to interact with folks tonight. I know it's anything like me or a reflective thinker, so you take the information, you process it, you have some questions, you have some dialogue. So we'll be back in on a scheduled meeting for Monday. So, and I also know there was some supplemental information put on our desk this evening. If you could, before we open it up to questions, could you just reiterate who you have for subject matter experts with you here this evening?
Yes, Mr. Craig Seymour from RKG Associates, who I believe
Spent an hour and a half on the phone with me the other day.
Yes, who has appeared before the council before, who's the gentleman, the city's retained expert for diff modeling. We also have our own lovely and talented Eric Mason, who has worked on that as well. He and Mr. Seymour worked, collaborated on reviewing some of the questions that were posed in your communication to us, Mr. Chairman, and you in turn transmitted our replies to the council, and so Mr. Mason was involved with that. We have, of course, Mr. Rob Stevens, the Deputy Director of Planning, who is the old man of the downtown project, going on 10+ years now. We have, of course, Mr. Fatsis, Mr. Wes Wilson of Desmond Associates, Tom Leclerc of Kennedy, and Dave White of Wood and Curran. All of these gentlemen have been involved in this project. All, certainly, two of the gentlemen in terms of the garage and public improvement elements, and others in all of the elements.
Great. Any questions from Mr. Gary? Also, Calmucci.
Chairman, I've broken my questions up into different sections, so if anyone else wants to, when I'm done with a section,
I figure Mr. Geary's here, so
I'll
cut his commute in half and maximize his time at the podium.
Thank you. Good evening, Bill.
Good evening, Councilor.
Just real quick on the pile of paperwork that's on my desk that I've never seen before. This is, I'd like to go through it so that it's clear what the new information you gave us today is. So there's this Hancock lot parking facility, open public meeting, June 14th. I presume this is a PowerPoint presentation that you did with the neighbors, residents, businesses?
That's correct.
Right. We've had this previously, but it wasn't dated June 14th when we got it previously, right?
Yeah. No. Spring.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. But that's what this is. This was the presentation that you did with interested parties, community meeting? Yeah.
That's correct.
All right. Then there is, do I have 2 copies of this? I have another one. Is there 2 copies or are they the same thing? Okay, maybe I stole one neighbors. All right, and then there is a traffic impact study, Hancock Lot Garage, dated March 2017 by Stantec Consulting Services.
That is correct.
All right, and this is new information we haven't been provided with previously, right?
That is correct.
Okay. Despite it being produced in March.
I believe enough to ask Mr. Wilson. I believe it's updated.
Yes, that was available in March and it's recently updated for the public presentation last night.
Okay. And then I think lastly, the only other new, 2 other things. There's a an executive summary for a pre-CAT budget, option 3 from Lee Kennedy,
That is correct.
right? Okay, that's a new piece of information. And then I believe the last thing is this Desmond Design Management technical memorandum dated yesterday, June 14th, from Wes Wilson to, from Nicholas Supple to Frank Tremontosi.
That's correct. That was actually.
You get up to the microphone, we're going to talk. You gotta get up to the microphone, we're going to talk.
That's correct. It was updated yesterday for the public presentation.
Okay, and you are Wes Wilson?
Yes. Well,
So with all due respect, what, and I don't mean to be like cheeky about it, but what, so the guy who wrote this, he works for you? Are you the senior person on this, and this was someone who was drafting a report?
we have a team within our office that works on that. Andy Hill, a senior principal, who oversaw the development of that report.
Okay.
And he was one of the individuals, Mr. Supple was one of the individuals that worked on that report.
Okay. You can stay up because I have a question about it, just very briefly, but I was just trying to go over with Mr. Gary what we have. But since you're already at the microphone, save you trouble getting back up and down. I have a concern. Again, I've only had this in my hand since I sat down about 20 minutes ago, so I haven't had a chance to go through, it's 39 pages. I would have loved to have gotten this even this morning, and I could have done some work going over it, but, so I got as far as section 1, it's a 1 paragraph in the introduction, and I'm a little surprised that it indicates that the City of Quincy's redevelopment plan includes construction of a 116-room hotel. Where is that going to be built?
116-room hotel.
That's clearly updated in the ordinance.
So it's got today's date on it.
I see that.
Bill, so that's why I'm asking Mr. Wilson about it. It's got today's date on it, and it's referencing outdated information. I'm sorry, it's got yesterday's date on it, and it's referencing outdated information about our downtown plan. So that's just the introduction. That's the only part I've read so far is the first paragraph. And I already got a problem.
Point well taken, Counselor. I'll take responsibility for that.
Well, it's not about responsibility. It's about,
It is.
well, how much do I trust the data that's contained? There's a lot of numbers and graphs in here. If in the introduction they can't get what the development plan is out of the gate. I mean, have you gone through this and you're familiar and comfortable with the numbers and I presume estimates that are in here relative to demand accumulation and use of the parking garage?
Yes, and I'm sorry I missed that opening paragraph because I went to the numbers first and spoke with Mr. Hill by phone and in person about the numbers. The purpose for the update was to update numbers with more recent traffic counts and with recent developments since that was initially drafted because it initially projected that the Ross Garage hadn't yet been demolished and there were other points in there that I did provide edits to bring it up to date.
Okay, and I appreciate that. So you're saying to bring it up to, this is the first document that we've received that I'm aware of from Desmond Design Management, right? I mean,
I believe that to be true.
so you may have received something that this was an update to, but this is our first and only report that we've received from them. And they are our parking garage consultants, right?
Correct.
All right, Mr. Wilson, thank you. Bill, I have some questions, some comments and whatnot for you. So just to kind of build on our conversation from the last meeting, which feels like just a couple days ago, we have a final price on the garage. That's what I'm seeing from the memo or executive summary from Lee Kennedy.
We have a final estimate.
Final estimate, right. And so that's $30 million, right?
it's the way it's broken down is it starts with the structure and goes through the various elements of the structure.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So it says garage total 29.9 million, construction total 37.8. So the total garage cost is 37.8, not the 29?
Yes, that's according to the estimate, the latest estimate we got from Lee Kennedy, and that's predicated on 730 spaces in the garage at $973 per space.
Okay. All right, we're going to get into that a little bit more, some of the details about that, but I appreciate you. So we appreciate you getting that. So we've narrowed down the range to a number.
Yes.
Okay, we're making progress, aren't we?
Yeah,
We're chugging along.
we are. And incidentally, Counselor, as I mentioned at our prior proceeding, the range was related to the fact that we were looking at different options for a garage, including the type of construction that's been mentioned here. And we ultimately focused in on this option for a number of reasons related to cost compared to other types of construction, as well as speed of construction, trying to keep the construction as expeditious as possible, both for cost savings purposes, as well as for minimizing as best one can the disruption that inevitably is involved with major construction.
Yeah, and I don't want to rehash the debate from our prior meeting, but my concern over that was that you've had a bond request that's been in for a month or two before us, and you hadn't yet settled on the cost, which is concerning when I'm asked to vote to authorize up to $80 million of taxpayer spending, and we don't yet know how much the garage is going to cost, which is the bulk of that spending. That was the concern. It felt premature for us to be receiving a presentation for a spending request to pay for a garage when it wasn't yet determined how much the garage was going to cost. That was the point I was trying to make. I'd also touched upon my concern, the general concern that I have, which I think is really, for me, it's the crux of this decision for me on this vote. And it's the balancing act that we have to do, as a body, as a legislative body authorizing spending. It's a balancing act that we have to do towards resources that we dedicate across the city. So I'm a ward counselor. I deal every day in the nitty-gritty of what needs to be fixed in our city, in ward form specifically, right? Sidewalks, potholes, streets, rats, you name it. So this, for me, comes down to a consideration of that balance between how much of taxpayer monies do we expend in the downtown for the growth of downtown, which I will say again, I believe that spending money downtown is important. We have to do that. I always have since I've been up here. One of the very first votes I took in support of the original LDA. I believe that the downtown will be the economic engine that drives our city forward. I hold true to that belief. But that doesn't mean I'm just going to throw, from my perspective, I'm just going to throw money at it, good money after bad money. And I'm not saying this is, but that's the balance is we don't have money to pave all the streets that need to be paved. Okay? We don't. We don't have money to pay for police details, to provide traffic enforcement on every street that I get calls about where kids live and cars are cutting through and speeding. We don't have the money for that. We don't have the resources. So for me, it's a balancing act. It always is up here. It's a balancing act of what our priorities are as a community and where we put our money. Because where we put our money is the true, we can say all we want about where our priorities are as a city, but it's where we put our money that shows what we truly believe our priorities are. So for me, it's a balancing act. And I need to be persuaded that the $80 million that's requested here and the tens of millions of dollars that'll be requested afterwards Because again, this is like a roller coaster. We're still towards the top, but we're not on the up anymore. We were on the up 2 years ago before anything had broken ground, right? We've crested, we're coming down. And that's a good part, because that's when things really pick up downtown. I think we're there, but there's a lot more spending. There's a lot more resources that the city's going to have to put into this. So if you're gonna make a stand, so to speak, that, okay, we're gonna trim back our financial commitment to the downtown, this is the place you start doing it, in my opinion. This is where you say, okay, well, we can do this, but we're not going to do it at the level that some folks want us to do. So that's the fundamental kind of the way I look at this. When I'm going to ask you questions later on about specific numbers and how we reach that and policy, it all comes back to that balancing act between the neighborhoods, the need we have in our neighborhoods, the need we have for infrastructure investment in our neighborhoods versus the infrastructure investment that we're being asked to make with this $80 million bond in the downtown. And I know Craig and I go round and round about the DIF money, and it comes from downtown, right? So that based on the new growth revenues from the downtown, we're borrowing against new growth, future new growth, right? It's future and current new growth dollars in the downtown. I represent a part of the city that approximately 60% of at least the residential new growth in terms of development has occurred over the last year or two. We're not seeing those dollars staying in Ward 4. Those dollars are going all around the city. They're going to every other ward in equal amounts. So the notion that all of the benefits, which is the new growth tax revenue, all the benefits of downtown stay in downtown, we borrow against it, and we double down to create that growth even more downtown. It's a little bit, the notion strikes me as contrary to how things work. Because Ward 4 is feeling the brunt of the overdevelopment of the city, of the poor planning of some of this stuff, and that's not a dig on Mr. Fatsy's the planning department, but traffic issues, we're the cut through to get to the highway. It's Ward 4 and it's the Neponset Bridge. That's how you get out of Quincy.
That's Ward 6.
What's that? No, I know that, right? That's why I added it. It's Ward 4 and Neponset Bridge. I'm glad you know you represented it. You're on the right track. So if we were able to hold, we have 60% of the new growth residential development in the past year and a half. If we were able to retain that in Ward 4, you wouldn't hear a peep from me because we'd have the best roads in the city about this in the new growth staying in the downtown, going towards downtown infrastructure. But we're feeling and getting the brunt of the negative impacts of a lot of the new growth happening in the city, and we're watching those dollars be spent in other parts of the city. Which, hey, that's the way it works, right? That's the system we have in place. Except for in the downtown, we're being asked here to dedicate the new growth in the downtown only to the downtown. So it's a tough notion for me to kind of get my head wrapped around. Because the neighborhoods in Ward 4 need infrastructure work too, roads, sidewalks, what have you. So let me ask you, can we earmark excess new growth money beyond the DIF commitments to infrastructure outside downtown?
Can we?
Yeah.
I honestly don't know, but my surmise would be I don't believe so. The DIF was in place when I, as you know, took this position, and I believe that it has a described geographic bounds. I would defer to Mr. Stevens, who's been involved in that whole process.
Good evening, councilors. As an answer to that question is DIF projects have to be within the DIF district. The only hook would be that the city has the ability to chase complete infrastructure systems. So an example of that would be a water main that needs to get replaced in Hancock Street. We could cross outside of the DIF boundary to replace the entirety of that water main to the next logical connection point where that could be replaced.
Let me clarify my question, Rob, because it's not quite what it is. I get the answer you're giving. I'm not saying to use, call it whatever you want, DIF. I mean, we call it DIF because that meets a program, right? District Improvement Finance.
Correct, it's a state authorized.
But I'm just talking about the new growth from the district. So forget about the DIF program. I'm saying I have revenue projections in here of what the new growth will be, right? I'm seeing, we're looking at the Quincy Downtown DIF, May 15, 2017 document from RKG. Page 6 says, at the end of an 18-year remaining DIF period leaves a surplus of nearly $110 million in the DIF account by year 2035. And I'll ask some questions about that later on, but that's essentially saying there's going to be more growth beyond what we're supporting with this $80 million bond. That's essentially what it's saying. The DIF area, okay, the downtown area is going to grow and grow to support borrowing $80 million, and then by 2035, the projections are that money you're investing, that $80 million, are going to grow substantially higher to an excess of $110 million by 2035. So what I'm saying is, can we earmark that new growth? Forget about the DIF financing and borrowing against future growth. What I'm saying is, can we, as a legislative body, as a city, can we as a policy say, okay, this is our projection, 110 million, we're going to dedicate 10 million between now and the year 2035, I know it sounds ridiculous, but just based on this number, to go towards paving roads outside of the city. Can we earmark future growth that's being projected here to be spent back in the neighborhoods so that there's a regime of a payoff for infrastructure to our neighborhoods?
Can I just chime in on that?
Sure.
Because I think it sort of ties back into a conversation that this body has deliberated on when we heard the presentation from the outside auditor, Powers and Sullivan. So as it stands right now, correct me if I'm wrong, but any surplus revenue that's generated in the DIF account essentially parks itself in what was referred to as a sinking fund that is inside the general fund. So at the end of the year, that excess revenue, which I believe was 1.3 or 1.6, I'm going off the top of my head here, that becomes part of the free cash certification process and shows itself in some of the appropriations that are put in front of us throughout the year. Now, that being said, this was sort of the policy, and this is what Mr. Powers and Sullivan shared with us when he was here. We would have, from a policy perspective, if we wanted to capture that revenue and put the sinking fund inside of the DIF. And the unique part of that policy decision is those monies would be 100% transferable. They could either stay in the DIF or they could move to the general fund. So there'd be flexibility. That's the state as I understand it now. So I'm just hearing you say this and I'm sitting here kind of chomping at the bit because I dug into that issue quite
I
substantially.
didn't understand it when you did it, but I do now.
Do you
Now that
understand?
I've asked the same question and you're telling me that's what you were, I get what you were saying there. I was a little...
We all learn in different capacities, so I'm glad that tonight's the night. But outside of that, in all sincerity, we're in a position that I do believe it's something that we should, act on one way or the other to kind of, I don't want to say isolate, but put that sinking fund in a position where you can pivot, right? Because you talk about risk management, you talk about DIF estimates, and you talk about being able to cover your debt obligations. My thought is, at least prematurely, as these obligations find themselves as bands, so short-term debt instruments, I'd rather have that surplus revenue sitting in a rainy day fund in the event of, God forbid, we have a cushion. Because right now, it goes into the general fund, becomes part of the free cash certification, it's gone. And that's obviously, Mr. Seymour could probably speak to this much more eloquently than I can, but as that debt matures and those short-term instruments become long-term instruments, we're going to be paying off principal. So the surplus won't be as much as it is now. So I just kind of want to...
No, I appreciate that. It was a good follow-up. I'll defer to you one second, Joe. And the reason why I asked, the numbers are there, 110 million in the next 17, 18 years. That's a lot of roads that could get paved in Ward 2, and Ward 4, and Ward 1, and in Ward 6. So my thought is, can we do that now, before that money gets gobbled up and finds another home to go live in? can we earmark it, and that was my question, can we earmark it to go towards infrastructure improvements in our neighborhoods so that it's not always going to go to the downtown, so that the benefit comes back to the taxpayer? And you can hold your answer, I'll defer to Councilor Finn here who wants to jump in.
As much as it pains me to say this, I have to remind, I believe, as my understanding is, this body, under a strong mayor model of government, we can't earmark anything. And essentially, nor can we appropriate anything. And so I think the question, perhaps with the solicitor, like, would be if, particularly in terms of your structural plan, does that amount to an appropriation, or is that outside of our authority to be able to do? Or is that something only that the mayor could present back to us as a plan? But the idea of us being able to earmark anything within a bond issue or anything that has any appearance of us appropriating, in my understanding, would probably not pass muster. But I'm not sure if the auditor has any opinion on that. But again, our power is to cut money, not to add it or designate it. But through you to the auditor.
I agree with you, Councilor. That would be a policy decision that would be made by the mayor's office and the administration. I'm not sure that it can be brought. I guess you can bring a request into him. There can't be any kind of money denomination attached to that.
I would imagine, I mean, anything where we direct resources, actually we step outside of our authority under our model of government. But, and again, it pains me to say it because I would love to be able to earmark some of these things and targets of these things. But I don't believe we can.
My point, Councilor, wasn't about the earmarking as much as it was the positioning of the account to capture the surplus revenue. Again, that would be, a mayoral decision on how those monies were appropriated. But I think if I was hearing his inquiry correctly, it would be, are we in a position right now to essentially capture that net new growth that's taking place in the downtown account? And the answer, based on my conversations with the auditor, the outside auditor, Mr. Kavanaugh, is yes. Can we earmark and appropriate those money? No. But we can, at some point, should we choose to act, essentially take that sinking fund that's sitting in the general fund and park it in a different account.